This is Kathmandu, the capital city of Nepal, surrounded by the majestic Himalayas. But this city also hides a dark secret, that of its children employed in the worst forms of child labor. 160 million children worldwide are victims of child labor, and half of them even work in dangerous circumstances. UN aims to eliminate all forms of child labor by 2025, and NGOs and governments have been working hard towards the goal. But lately, the number of children working has only been rising globally. Is it possible that we're focusing all our interventions and efforts in the wrong direction, and that we still do not understand what drives children into child labor and what drives employers to hire them? But there is one approach that calls for our attention. A groundbreaking program which researchers have been working on in Bangladesh and Nepal for the past 4 years. And what if I told you that the researchers are working children themselves? I'm Soumya Khandelwal, a photojournalist, and I want to take you to the dark alleys of Kathmandu that hides the lives of working children, the lives that NGOs and institutions rarely see.
My name is Amita. When my parents came to Kathmandu, I was very young. My parents used to fight because there was no money at home, no money for children to study. My father did not earn. Mom used to work but left after being sick. I am working at the dance bar at Soltimode. We would go to work from 3 p.m., had to clean up, guests started coming, had to sit with them. We had to eat, drink, whatever they wanted, as had to make sales of the owner. The owner is not good in real. He also comes to enjoy with us, even though he is old. The owner comes and sits with us and touches us. Sometimes his sons will also be there, and they enjoy together, having lots of girls around. While working there, the hard time was when guests touch our body. The guests urge to go outside or room for enjoying. At times, I had also gone with guests. If we went on the demand of the owner, he receives payments from the guest. Father-like aged people come for romance with children. They enjoy with girls. They come to drink, eat, touch here and there, enjoy and leave. Those who criticize our work outside the bar also come there to enjoy. If your parents have nothing, cannot do anything for you, then we have to do something to survive. What other works I can do now? There is no alternative work. I also have brothers and sisters. I will not allow that to happen to them, no matter what I have to do.
Amita's story is just one of the hundreds of real-life stories from children and young adults who were recently child workers themselves. These children are the researchers of an innovative program that started with collecting these stories, their own stories. and analyzing them to an extent that we haven't seen before. The program is called Clarissa, a large participatory action research committed to tackling the worst forms of child labor in Nepal and Bangladesh. But can this radically participatory approach actually lead to change?
So, child-led, child-centered, participatory action research, what exactly is this? I really wanted to learn that. And through that, I came here. And really, this program has that approach. Like, it's participatory, it's action-oriented, and especially the ones who are suffering or who are into the worst form of child labor, for instance, they are leading the research. We say like we are researchers, but we are just facilitating them, and everything is being done by them. It was a great support for me also to break my own learning, like you say, de-learning. Like, how can children, like research thing, and children are being involved, how can they do the research thing, Before, that was my thought before. And even our colleagues, we used to discuss like, how does it happen, like collecting life stories, taking actions, and everything is done by children. How would it go, And that, like, it's 4 years we worked with them, and it was proven now, like they come up with fantastic results.
Collecting 400 life stories was one of the unique approach that we took in Clarissa, because usually what we do is we take interviews with the participants. But life story itself has a very different approach. It doesn't have any selected questions. We do not go with any assumptions or any preset ideas that what we would like to get from the stories. Rather, we go with open mind, and we create a safe environment for children to share the stories that they would like to tell. So we started with questions like, tell us about yourself. What is the story that you would like to tell us?
My name is Pavel. Our financial crisis started when my mother became sick and father faced the loss at his business. We could not pay the house rent. We had to go through a very difficult time. I wanted to stay in my village, continue my study, and learn something. But when I saw my mother sick, I left the school. I am a leather worker where I was supposed to be in school. I had to face the incidents of cuts and wounds for several times. This is a risky job. I need to process the leather. After that, I need to carry the processed leather on my head to load the vehicle. Sometimes I toggle under the direct sun. There is no fixed working hour for me. At least twice in a month, I need to work for the whole night. I work 7 days a week. I also want to go to school, want to live in a good place and have a better life. I am destined to live a life of hand to mouth. But I have a dream that one day I will go to school, not in Dhaka, but in our village.
Look at what we have here. This is a drying field for a lot of leather. It's obviously a very littered space, and the leather is drying all over. Let's walk in and see.
The situation here in Hazaribagh is very different from Kathmandu. And while many people think about global supply chains when talking about child labor, most children are actually working in the informal economy and domestic markets. And That's what the children here have in common with the ones in Kathmandu. They are under the radar of global supply chains and the common NGO work.
Wow, look at that. From this place, you see the entirety of the scale of activity that's happening here in Hazaribagh, and I'm sure it's only a fraction of what actually exists here. Whatever empty space there is, it's been turned into a drying field for heights.
In Nepal, our work is focused on adult entertainment sector, and in Bangladesh, we are working on children involved in informal leather supply chain. So the focus is urban neighborhood, but the sector itself is very different. So the context of children working in commercial sexual exploitation or in spaces where they're exploited in everyday terms is different to how children work in the urban neighborhoods in Dhaka, which is Hazaribagh, and in the factories where they work in leather processes or leather goods production, etc. The story of Paval is an example. What we found through the story collection process and the story analysis process that this is more or less typical of how children experience their lives. So we start with a very open space where children feel more relaxed and comfortable, and they were able to collect the stories from their peers. And gradually children were part of the analysis process, and they analyzed all the 400 life stories by creating small system map and the big system map.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, this is huge, and this is our big system map. And you will be surprised to know that here there are 199 small maps, and the children have made these maps from that 199 map. They sat together, they read the story, and then analyzed them. This is the final product of the analysis. This is called the small system map. And here you can find the synopsis of the entire children's life, that why they are coming to this worst form of child labor. This is the causes and consequences. This is showing the relationship. Here, every stick is showing the causes of why the children are working here, and because of that, what happened. This is not the chronological of different incidents of life, but different causes, factors. Accumulating all those 199 maps, the children developed the big system maps.
So what is happening here right at the center of the map?
Okay. The right of the center is the situation when the child was involved in the leather sector. This is the center. And these are all the other factors, why they came to here, and also what happened because of that. Then they had some debates, like on which theme they can work or which theme they cannot work.
What the children achieved here is just astonishing. Out of this huge amount of data that they extracted from the life stories into the small system maps, They created this one big system map each in Bangladesh and Nepal. And based on this deep knowledge, the children were able to identify the core issues that they wanted to take action on. They formed action research groups, which would go on to generate innovation and action to tackle those issues.
So when children analyzed the life stories, then they identified the themes that they would like to work on. For example, addressing family violence, or working on education opportunities, or working on issues related to workplace conditions. And then they formed a group where 10 to 12 children were part of one action research group. So for example, if children are working on issues like family conflict and family violence, they identified some households that they would like to focus on, and then they identified the potential participants, for example, parents, fathers and mothers and other family members, and then collectively children in the action research groups analyzed those data, and that gave them the confidence that now we know the situation better and we need to identify what we want to achieve. And then through a process where children develop a theory of change, then they identified the action plans for that, and then they had the timeline, identified the stakeholders who they need to work with, and gradually children took some actions to address the issue that they wanted to work on. So that process actually started organically. So there's a group working on education opportunities for children, and some of the group members decided that if we want to make any change within our group, then it's important that we create opportunities for children. But the problem is that if children are working, they do not have the time to go to school.
They used to face a problem that when a child starts working with a business unit, and when he becomes absent for 2 weeks, the school authority forbid them to come to school. They became dropout. But children's argument was that we can study by ourselves or with the help of other peers, and we can sit for the exam and we can pass the exam. So they started dialogue with the school teacher, school management committee, and along with the business owners group also. There was 4-party meeting, and they decided that being a child worker, a child should be allowed to continue their education. And wherever the child workers face problem in understanding for math, the teacher will give extra time to explain them,
মানে যখন আমাদের ফ্যামিলিতে একটু সমস্যা ছিল, আমার আব্বু ঠিক মতন কাজকাম করতো না, আম্মু আমার পড়াশোনা চালাইতে পারতো না, তো তারপর থেকে আমার পড়াশোনা অফ ছিল। আমি আগে পড়াশোনা করতাম, তারপর মাঝখান দিয়ে ক্লাসের কাজ করি, পড়াশোনা অফ ছিল, তারপর আবার ক্লাসে ঢুকে তারপর আবার পড়াশোনা স্টার্ট করি। আমি যখন কাজ করি, যখন ভর্তি, তখন আমার অনেক ভালো লাগছে, কারণ আমার আগের লাইফটা অনেক খারাপ ছিল। আমি আগে অনেক খারাপভাবে কাটতো। এখন স্কুলে পড়াশোনা করবো নতুন করে, নতুন স্কুল, নতুন ব্যাগ, নতুন করে ক্লাসে স্যার ম্যাম টিচার, তাদেরও ব্যবহার অনেক সুন্দর ছিল। তারা আমার সুবিধা দিছে, যেখানে বেতন ছিল 400, সেখানে আমার 200 নিছে। তো এই জিনিসগুলো ভালো লাগছে। আমার আম্মু রাজি হয়েছে, আমার আম্মু খুশি হয়েছে।
Do the ARG groups still continue?
হ্যাঁ, এখনো করতেছি। জানি না আর বাকিরা করে নাকি, বাট আমি এই বছর 3টে স্টুডেন্ট স্কুলে ভর্তি করেছি ক্লাস 8-এ।
So in Clarissa, what we wanted to do is that we wanted to explore and understand the complexity of children's lives from their own narratives, from their own perspective. So towards the end, of course, we would like to contribute towards, eliminating child labor, but that was not our primary goal, or that was not the aim of the program. We wanted to know how children and adults who are within this complex situation navigate their complexities and what they think would work best to make a change in their situation. So this helped us to get a very deep understanding of the lives of children who are involved in worst form of labor, and gave us very deep understanding of the business employers, very small business employers working in informal businesses.
We are trying to find out which actors are playing the major roles to pull and push the worst form of child labor. So it's whole systemic action research group. So it's like we wanted to understand it from the structural point of view, we want to understand it from the institutional point of view, we wanted to understand it from the relational point of view. We also wanted to understand from what are the mindsets of the people. Often what happens is when people or any program or any project do the research, we often tend to end up looking at the one aspect only, like that is the supply side of the thing. Why the children come in the work, why it happens, what could be done with as an in the ground level to not make them to come to work. So those kind of things happen and it ends there. But in Clarissa, why we bring this another aspect, that is working with the business owner, is we wanted to understand in the system of the supply chain dynamics, what are the ingredients, who are the actors who are bringing these children, why they are pulling these children, why these children are being pulled in this sector. So initially, my interaction with them was not very smooth, not very good. They were quite negative towards us, and they didn't want to work with any NGO or any program because they feel like they are always portrayed as a villain.
As Ranjana said, the children gather knowledge, they get it organized, and they find the confidence to express their findings to the business owners and make them a part of the research. But can the business owners really be a part of the change? I want to talk to them and find out. We're seeing for ourselves the young women and girls involved in the sector and also witnessing the vulnerability that this work puts them in. Dancing in front of a drunken audience, being pushed into consuming lots of alcohol with the customers, and the constant fear of sexual exploitation. The business owners are a major part of this whole equation, and that's why bringing them under the purview of this program seems to be the logical next step.
पुरुष पनि र महिला बढी प्रयोग भएर चल्ने व्यवसाय भएको कारणले गर्दाखेरि र त्यहाँभित्रको ग्राहकहरूले नशा जुन ड्रिङ्क्सहरू अल्कोहलहरू युज गर्ने भएको हुँदाखेरि अलिकति यो पेसा सेक्युर छैन। यो पेसा अलिकति रातिमा अलिकति सेक्युरिटीका कुराहरूमा चाहिँ महिलाहरूलाई अलिकति समस्या हुन्छ भन्ने हिसाबले र राति चल्ने पेसा भएको हिसाबले गर्दाखेरि र रातिमा काम गर्न आउने प्राय मान्छेहरू अलिकति अनएजुकेटेड हैन, गरिबी हैन, विभिन्न कारणले रातिको पेसामा काम गर्न आउने मान्छे भएको कारणले गर्दाखेरि कार्यशालाको माध्यमबाट हाम्रो सम्पूर्ण व्यवसायहरूले यो विषयमा जान्न पाएको छ, अनुभव लिन पाएको छ। हामी भिजिटहरू पनि गर्यौँ ठाउँ-ठाउँमा र सम्पूर्ण व्यवसायलाई राखेर यो विषयमा हामीले ब्रिफिङ गरिरहँदाखेरि यस्ता समस्याहरूलाई अलि न्यूनीकरण भएको हाम्रो क्षेत्रमा पाउँछौँ।
I understand you're a part of a Khaza Ghar owner group. So, can you tell me how is it formed and what does it do?
हाम्रो चाहिँ यो खाजा घर ग्रुप चाहिँ पहिला सुरु चाहिँ हाम्रो यो गङ्गोबु एरियाको खाजा घरको ग्रुपको ओनरहरूलाई चाहिँ हामी भेटेर एउटा ग्रुप बनाऊँ भन्ने जस्तो क्लेरिसाले जुन लिएर आएको प्रोग्राममा चाहिँ त्यहाँ पछिबाट म्यामहरूले चाहिँ हामीले फेसिलिटेट गरिसकेपछि हामी यस्तो यस्तो ग्रुप छ तपाईँहरूलाई हुने समस्याहरू योहरू यस्तोहरूलाई चाहिँ हामीले उ गर्छौँ भनेपछि तपाईँहरूलाई समस्या के परेको छन् वान बाई वान आफ्नो कुरा राख्दै गर्दै जाँदाखेरि सबैको प्रब्लम चाहिँ सिमिलर भएपछि फिल भयो नि त उसलाई पनि त सेम प्रब्लम रहेछ मलाई पनि सेम प्रब्लम रहेछ अहिले हामी प्रब्लमसँग जुझ्दै आइरहेको नि त सेमै रहेछ भन्ने हिसाबले चाहिँ कहाँबाट आयो केले गर्दा आयो भन्ने कुरा नि भयो त्यही अघि न बसेको भाइ बहिनीहरूसँग पनि कस्तो किसिमको व्यवहार गरिन्छ हैन अनि उहाँहरूले चाहिँ भोग्नुभएको कुराहरू हैन अनि काम गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ अब एकातिर पढ्ने हैन पढ्नु एकातिर सर गयो आयो होमवर्क गर्न नपाइकन काममा हिँड्नु काम गर्नुपर्ने त्यो अवस्था देख्दाखेरि पनि उहाँहरूले चाहिँ त्यो किसिमको चाहिँ अब वातावरण उहाँहरूले फ्यामिली वातावरण त पाउनु भएको छैन नि जुन किसिमको चाहिँ समयमा चाहिँ फ्यामिलीबाट चाहिँ अलिकति गाइडलाइन भएको हुनुपर्ने समयमा चाहिँ अब चाहिँ ओनरहरूबाट चाहिँ प्रेसर भएर चाहिँ काम गर्नु पर्दाखेरि उहाँहरूको पनि त कस्तो अवस्था भयो भनेको त्यो किसिमको चाहिँ मैले बुझेँ अनि त्यो कारणले पनि अब हामीले पनि अब कोही हामीसँग काम नगरे तापनि कोही टिनेजको भाइ बहिनी हाम्रो नजरमा छ भने उनीहरूलाई पनि हामीले कसरी चाहिँ उनीहरूलाई चाहिँ हामीले सम्झाउन सक्छौँ.
When we are talking about this sector, Soumya, we have to understand we are talking about the informal business. But then we again yet have to understand the definition of informal business itself. Those who are not registered, those who could be registered but not like they have not renewed their license, the way they are running the business, like not paying taxes to the government, that it become informal kind of things.
Then we also understand, because we worked with the business employers as well, the employers who are employing those children, they are also very vulnerable because they have very small business and they don't have any regulations as well. So it's a very complex situation where children need to work.
ওদের হয়তো ধর না ওদের আম্মারা নিয়ে আসে ওরাও দেশে থেকে আসে ওদের টাকা পয়সা নাই তো লেখাপড়া করে না বাচ্চারা দুষ্টামি করে তো যে বলতেছে তাহলে আমার ছেলেটার একটু কাজে রাখেন যেন হালকা পাতলা কাজটা দেন আপনি তো এই জন্য হয়তো আমি মহিলা হিসেবে বলে যে তাহলে আপনারা একটু হালকা পাতলা কাজ করেন এই জন্য আপনার কাছে আমরা দিয়ে গেলাম বাচ্চাটারে আপনি একটু বুঝলেন সবাই তো একটা দুর্বল এখানে তো কেউ আর তেমন একটা না চালানপুঞ্জি নাই সবাই একইভাবে কাজ করে একসাথে চলাফেরা করে এটাই আর কি.
Many of the females that are working as a Khaza Ghar owners, they don't have any other options. And they're running in a very low margin. So it's only for their survival they are doing. So do they have alternative? No. They don't even have alternative. So what option they have? They don't even know what is child labor. They think like they are sympathetically hiring a children, giving them a platform to work. They think like I'm giving him or her a platform to work, so I'm doing good to the children. But it's not like she understands the psychological bit of it. She doesn't understand the consequences or the legal aspect of all those. So those kind of things. So bringing them together as in one collective voices so that they can come up with their solutions. So collectively in their sector, they can be the change maker, they can be the leader. Bringing them together, making and forming a group, bringing them together, setting up that platform was a great achievement for Clarissa to do.
The thing is, now government started giving value to the findings of Clarissa. That is the first, achievement of Clarissa. That the government people started acknowledging the value of this research. One thing I can say that most recently on 6 March, we have a final dissemination event with the government. There was 3 parallel sessions in disseminating our findings. And one of the session was presented by myself that was on informal sector and child labor. In that session, the chief guest was the Joint Secretary of Labor Unit of Ministry of Labor. After the presentation, many of the development workers, argued for the traditional approach of solving child labor issues, but it was a surprise for me that the government people, they said that no, in that presentation I found the reality, I found the life of the children. So as a government bureaucrat, it's an opportunity for me to have this finding and design our child labor elimination program.
I think the best part is the ownership they have taken, because unlike many of the programs, until the program is there, activities are there. And once the program is phased out, then the program or activities are also halted up. But here, being a participatory action research program, it was not us doing or directing what has to be done. It was them who were taking actions. They said, this is our problem, and for mitigating that problem, this needs to be done. It was their idea, and we just supported their idea. Once they internalize that, okay, this is our issue, now we have taken up this, we need to complete this. Sometimes I just think what I do. Do I prefer to do something imposed by other, or do I do something which I feel that's for me? Now I look back to the time when I myself was a child. Did anyone trusted me that way, or did I have that confidence then?
This program is not about top-down initiatives that all too often fail to meet the real needs of the children, or government interventions which are so often unenforceable. This is about change that ripples out, that draws new people and institutions to it because it is successful, and that is sustainable because it is owned by the people that generated it. Clarissa has modeled how deep participatory processes can open up pathways for change at scale.
What's most impressive is the dynamic that the participatory action research has started. From children to employers, from teachers to institutions, there's not only a will to change, but the change is actually happening. Would you have had the trust to give the research in the hands of children? The people at Clarissa, they did.